Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Best in the West, the League of Legends show, where we talk about the LEC and everything around the LEC, all the action that happened. And this will be the final LEC specific episode of this season, this split. We're probably gonna do something in the rest of the year, maybe some world content, maybe even some off-season content if you want it. But for this specific year, this will be the final episode. So, of course. Last weekend, we had the finals. It was Rogue against Fnatic and then a Rogue against G2 in the finals. Rogue finally winning a trophy after missing out 2 times before. But Veteran, how was your weekend? How did you experience everything from your comfortable room, watching the mayhem unfold?
I didn't actually. So I initially watched the Rogue Fnatic series at home, but then I actually ended up going to a viewing party of a bunch of UK casters, including like Nightmare and stuff. At like this, for any of you guys who watched me like 4 or 5 years ago, actually at the internet cafe where I used to stream from. They've now been brought up by like a new bunch of guys, and they were doing an LEC viewing party, and yeah, that was actually really chill. So that's where I watched the finals. So I didn't live view the finals.
You went back to your roots, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Kind of. Well, I mean, I'd already done my competitive career before that point, but yes.
Was there any particularly like Fnatic biased crowd there because it's in Britain and they're supposed to be the British org aside from Excel?
So I've never once in my entire life felt like they were a British org.
I don't either, but that's why they
feels like they're a British org.
Yeah, that's how they want to profile it sometimes. Yeah.
I don't see that. I mean, I ultimately think that it benefits a lot of organizations to be in London because it's one of the best places to own property on the planet if you just want a guaranteed asset. That's partly why initially a lot of the organizations were actually trying to get the EULCS moved to London and away from Berlin. Fnatic actually do have decent property in London, and I assume that's the reason why. But like, they don't go like super hard on the British branding in League, as far as I can tell.
No,
like, at least
I don't think
never...
so either. But they have the London viewing party sometimes. But also then, because you were there for the finals, who would the Fnatic crowd root for? Was it Rogue who just beat them, or G2, their arch nemesis? You know, so yeah.
I saw more people with G2 jerseys than Rogue jerseys for sure.
Yes.
And I also saw Nightmare, who had like this double entendre going where he had a G2 jersey, but he had a Rogue jersey underneath.
Nice, very clever.
So that he had the selfie prepped, you know, with a like.
Very clever.
It was like partway through the second game. I think definitely in the third game when Hilly was like
the Lulu flash ult.
No, not then. Sorry, I said Hilly, but he wasn't even playing in the actual finals.
Oh yeah. Sorry, yeah.
In the G2 Rogue game in the second game, like that was like insane. But like I remember when they did not end for whatever goddamn reason.
G2,
like,
you mean in Rogue space? Yeah.
G2 just decided like they had two opportunities to end, but like the first opportunity where they decided not to was like, oh look, there's a Rogue jersey.
Jokes on you. Supported them all along. Actually, a friend of mine, because the Spring Split finals were in the LEC studio, right? And I saw her walking in, and she's like supporting Rogue. It's like, oh, awesome. And then G2 wins, and it turned around, and she's there in a G2 jersey. Like, what? What?
People are hedging. These people are all hedging their bets.
Oh man, these are the true elite among us.
Yes, I think the Rogue jersey was the one he actually had with a name on it, though. So I think that technically is more valid than the G2.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
game 2 was mad, actually.
It was a mad game. We'll get all to it. Yeah, my viewing experience was also a live viewing party, but actually in Malmö. And man, it was crazy, dude. Just finally being back in such a big stadium. I don't know if you are a fan of attending these events in person, so big and so loud with this many people. But for me, this is the reason I transitioned to League, because back in 2019, I visited the Spring Splits in Rotterdam, the finals, and
I competed there once.
Back then, I had no clue about League. It was merely a convenience. I lived like 15 minutes away by train, and I told
Yeah.
the site I was writing for the time, hey, I know you guys like League, should I go there and see if I can do some interviews? And they said, yeah, sure, we'll get you a press pass. So with my zero knowledge of League understanding, I knew who Faker was, obviously, and I played a few games to, try to at least understand the game a bit. So I knew like three
I'm so
champions,
sorry.
which were, yeah. So I went there, and it was a great experience. Got to know so many people, and I interviewed like people like Quickshot and Laure and Carlos. We're all very friendly and all very understanding of me being new to that environment. But the moment I walked into that stadium, and saw all these people chanting, I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, this is what I want to do. Because up until then, I'd be covering Hearthstone, which I very much enjoyed, but it's a much calmer setting. It's definitely a tavern
Yeah.
setting without the crowd cheering. And this was so much bigger. So being back in such an environment, finally, actually, it was amazing to witness. And everybody was, you could feel that people had been longing for such an event again as well. It was fantastic.
I definitely like attending Worlds games in the stadium for sure. I don't like with LEC. I'll do it if I'm in Berlin. But I don't have like an urge to do it.
Yeah, yeah,
Mostly because I'm actually quite impartial to the teams.
yeah.
There are generally players that I want to see do well, but they can also do well without winning necessarily.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I'm going there like up against the crowd or something. Whereas like I remember in 2017, I went to China for Worlds and the Fnatic quarterfinal games. I was sat there with Peter Dunn and I was hella embarrassing him because I was like standing up and cheering for Fnatic. And when they won the third game, right? When Fnatic won the third game, I was like the only person standing up and I was going ham. And Peter was like trying to get me to sit down. And I'm like, nah, fuck that. Let's go. I'm the only fucking voice here.
Yeah.
Let's do this shit.
Yeah.
I love doing that stuff. I love doing that stuff because when it comes to Worlds, I'm just straight an EU fanboy, right? Like,
yeah.
analysis doesn't necessarily go out the window, but like, I will be cheering the whole goddamn time for every EU team
Yeah.
and laughing like that when they win, like no matter what. Like, I love that shit.
Yeah.
But when it's in Europe, because I don't feel attached to any specific team or org. I don't really get that,
Okay, yeah. For me, it's just like I'm a fan of good League of Legends. So I will cheer for whichever great play is being made. Which means that if one team is looking to get the Baron, but another, like, I'll be like, yeah, let's go. And then if another team steals, like, yeah, let's go. And it's a very maybe a bit conflicting to the outsider, but because I'm also like for my job try to be very neutral. I'll just cheer. I will admit though, when Rogue did win the title, and we might discuss it a bit later, I genuinely felt so happy for them. But we walked through the weekend because we started off with Fnatic versus Rogue, a series in which Rogue, I would say, was pretty much the underdog, pretty decisively so, because they had been stomped by G2 in the week prior. They had looked shaky against Mad Lions already.
Terrible,
Yeah, they were terrible. Fnatic, on the contrary, looked amazing. It looked like everything was falling into place. And that's how they started off the series, actually, as well, with an absolute shitstomp of Rogue with Mad Lions, with Mad Lions, with Humanoid, who obviously was on Mad Lions, having another Silas game.
God, that was insane.
Yeah, this guy should just not be given Silas anymore, I guess. And Rogue learned that in a very hard way. But yeah, after that, Rogue bounced back. But let's go through that series. I mean, I think everybody expected Fnatic to win this one, but Rogue showed up pretty well after the first game.
They did. I mean, so like so when you were saying Fnatic just looked like everything was falling into place, I kind of had a shaky hand there because I still thought they basically lost all the drafts against Mad Lions, right?
Yeah, but I mean, team
play
play
critical
wise,
of their drafting there. Yeah. But like, I feel like the drafting actually really messed them up in this series. Because like the initial, like Rogue's going Lucian Nami, you're going Yumi Silas, you get Zeri with that as well. You actually have your choice of pretty much anything you want with that third. And then you had like really easy frontline for you to play around with. Like, I've no idea how Ornn gets all the way through like that. I know Aatrox is actually pretty decent right now, but like Ornn has ways to survive almost any matchup and just be useful in any scenario. So you don't really care too much about that. And they've got Lucian Nami plus Ahri, like my biggest trigger point on the planet. and it's like, great, well, Fnatic are just going to stomp. And Fnatic obviously like did stomp that game. Humanoid, Astro stomped that game. But you know, if only one mid laner's doing damage, then obviously it's going to happen. Although, like, he also got, like, throughout this series, I do want to say Humanoid to me was definitely the better mid laner. Like, he was outlaning, he was outlaning Larson insofar as the matchups would allow. Because they did end up prioritizing pretty good matchups to Larson from the third game onwards. But I do think ultimately Humor was a strength all the way throughout, not just in his highlight plays on the first game. But the big thing for me that was so strange was that they kept having this priority of Poppy over Trundle, but they allowed both through, and that was wild to me because it's like I like I mean. If I want the Trundle into Poppy. You've done so well with Trundle. Your composition isn't really dependent on bypassing Poppy, so you don't care too much about her ground, even though you do have stuff like Zeri on your composition. I don't know why you're going for the Poppy end of Poppy Trundle so many times. Like they did it every time until they just ended up leaving Jarvan open for the enemy, and that's like, great, you've put Malrong on his comfort champion now, you know? So you had these compositions where, because of the Poppy into Trundle dynamic, on the setup in the fights, you had to act really fast on that setup to make it work, because Poppy is basically paper. And Fnatic, they are playing well, but they are nowhere near as cohesive and decisive as a unit where the moment Razor gets the pin, they will just go on it, right?
Yeah.
They don't do that.
Yeah.
They definitely still feel like a team that, you know, their carries do play for themselves, and they're not like that. And so it was just a tragedy watching all these pins happen and then Fnatic don't actually follow up, or these pins happen, they do follow up, and then Hylissang just ints. And like it was so mad. Not just that one famous
No, I know.
the whole like it was like but like these things would happen. Like you either just you don't have to follow up damage, and you're in a composition necessarily that you have to act fast on because you're doing this really weird trade in draft all the time. And Hylissang's running it on my screen, something that is much easier to run it on than the fresh he managed to run it on last time he was against Rogue. I don't know what happens game 3 versus Rogue for Hylissang, by the way, but last split, game 3, he started running it, and this split, game 3, zooming into the enemy nexus. I don't like. He has a mental block against this team. It's insane. Like it did not come down to Razork humanoid or like upset KDA playing or Wonder just pulling off like the ridiculous stuff that happened against Adam last year. It came down to, again, Hylissang has just run it, right?
Yeah.
And I hate that so much.
I mean, what you were saying about you know, still individuals doing their thing. I will say that I believe in the previous series that they played against Mad Lions, but also against Misfits. I would say at least we were talking about how Resork and Humanoid were finding each other more, in that they were bouncing off each other very well. Where Resork would do, you know, pretty basic stuff, just coming with the Poppy, burn the mid laner's flash, circle around, come back, get the kill together with Humanoid, right? But it seemed like those things here were already not necessarily working anymore. And I also would say that I do think that Fnatic tried to play similar-ish towards bot anymore, you know, with freeing up mid lane and then transitioning it into bot. But they also didn't seem to find that consistently well enough. Now, I have to say, Rogue was answering it pretty decently, you know, like Fnatic had these very early focus lanes sometimes, you know, but I think that Rogue did it pretty well. Malrang was actually backing up his bot lane pretty sufficiently, I would say. And at the same time, you had Odo in the top lane was absolutely turbo stomping Wunder. He was having an amazing series, which allowed Malrang to stop putting the focus there much and focusing it more on mid and bot in order to prevent Fnatic from finding these early advantages.
I mean, there was so I don't necessarily mean that like their plans are not as 5. Their plans are still as 5. I mean that those in the moment plays where someone just makes a call and you have to follow it. Those are the things that aren't right. We didn't demonstrably see
trust.
working for them before either. Yeah, and that when you do when you do these compositions, that really, really matters, right? You have to be willing to go in on these, even if it's going to be a fail. You just have to have that implicit trust, and they never developed that, and they still didn't have it.
Yeah.
I think on the on the Odo point, I agree with him, I agree with that in terms of like the entire playoffs. Like I think Odo one is being a standout.
Yes.
But for me, he's always been top 2 in Europe minimum. So I'm perfectly like it's that doesn't really change too much to me. I thought that his flanks in game 2 were insane on the Renekton.
Yeah.
And I also
Absolutely.
really liked the Renekton pick in that draft. That was like one of the only times I've looked and thought like Renekton actually just stomps this whole thing, because it's like a full shields composition onto Zeri. And his empowered W just eliminates all that. And he was able to find these angles, and he was able to set up those fights, and that's ultimately what was able to allow them to win the games. It's not even just like he's winning lane or something. He's being very useful in these games.
Yeah.
It's also worth noting, though, how much potential there was in the Fnatic lineup, because in the first game, where you had Malwang on Vi and not able to get out on the map as fast as he can on other champions, you literally just saw all of them get outlaned, even on like the Lucian Nami matchup, right? Was getting 2v2 dived under turret by Zeri Yumi. Right? This just should not happen, you know? Sure, I think Ari after level 5 is a bit useless anyway, but like she shouldn't be getting solo killed by Sylas mid, right? Like they were getting outlaned across the board. But because Fnatic were never able to build that level of teamwork needed in like the more clutch moments, they weren't able to take the series, and whatever happens to Hillis,
No,
I
no.
don't fucking know what happens to this.
Yeah, but what I mean to say is that they never, like, Fnatic didn't, like, in the laning phase get an advantage that was just insurmountable for Rogue, right? And I think, as you mentioned as well, in that second game, Odo Omnis for Renekton was insane. But even there, you did see Rogue have a bit of a shaky moment where they were pushing in, like they got the Baron, they started pushing in lanes, but then overstayed their welcome, and Fnatic got an ace basically on them. Or like one rogue player survived. I don't remember. Maybe it was Trimbu. Trimbu survived there, but still, I think you saw during this series Rogue also becoming more comfortable, maybe with just playing on stage, you know, because for 4 of these players, it was the first time in an arena like this. And Trimby actually said in the press conference after the series and also after the G2 series, he said the first games I played in this stadium, I was shitting my pants, you know. But you saw him on camera, and you saw the moments where, towards the end of the series, he was hyping up the crowd. He was like, "Let's go!" You know, like these moments. And I think you saw this team mature in this series as well, and that was just great. It's a bit similar to how we saw Fnatic come together in the Excel series, but for Rogue, it was all about the environment and playing in the situation.
I mean, there are some people that genuinely just feed off crowds really, really, really well.
Yeah.
I always felt like I did way better in front of crowds than like in any kind of isolated situation. They just get you hyped up, and sometimes that hype gives you the focus that you need to make the play. Like the hype gives you the confidence, right? But I am aware that isn't like a normal thing. But with Trimby, you could clearly see that was like a normal thing with him, right? It wasn't turning him into like a Super Saiyan, but it was making him more consistent as a player for sure over this series. Or over both series. He wasn't making well, he definitely did in the first game, but he wasn't making like the same level of errors that I'm used to seeing from him. Also, it didn't help that Hylissang was in the first series as well, but it's definitely mattered against G2 for sure.
Absolutely.
And it's not necessarily that like because we talk a lot about chokers, and I definitely don't think it's like if you have the kind of players who respond really well to hype in any context, whether it's within a team or not, those guys are so much better in stadiums. Like they are so much more. They respond to an audience with "You're all here for the show, come watch." Right? They want more. You know, they want more of that kind of an attention.
I mean, if
know?
anything, this has to put the final nail in the coffin of the Rogue choke. Like meme or whatever you want to call it.
I never bought that meme in the first place.
No, but man. I mean, you know the community does, right? And you know, objectively against Mad Lions, like that you could say that series they choked, right? Because they were 2-0 up, and even in game 5 they had like an 8k gold lead, and they lost, and they admitted themselves, yeah, I mean, what else are you gonna call than choke? But in the spring finals, when they got stomped by G2, G2 was just better. You know, it's not like Rogue were ever in a commanding lead. In the G2 game they played in the upper bracket, this G2 was just better. But now you can see, and I would say, you know, the choke should not even have existed this year because they reverse swept Fnatic. Like, how is that not overcoming what's happening, right?
I also thought when they got reverse swept by Mad, I never viewed that as choke either. That's the example I always bring up to explain the whole armor thing, right? Like, where what Mad did was that in the third game they just started playing 3-man topside, right? And Rogue had never played that because their jungle support have no concept of that, and blah blah blah. There was no team that was.
But in game 5 they still were like
that.
they were in a commanding lead in that game 5. They had that game basically.
Sure, but like those games happen anyway. Like I don't remember the exact circumstances of that one, but the strategic reason why they started losing was not because they just started playing worse. It's because there was something on the map that they did not know how to engage with.
Right.
And that, like, so that's like, all like even Larson's being memed into like saying himself that he thinks he chokes and blah blah blah. Like, these guys showed a very consistent.
No, he and Odo are so upset with this meme. I say, you know, like they just get annoyed with it. So they also said at the press conference, you know, like, yeah, we just got so tired of it. We really, you know, like if we lost, people would have said we were chokers, regardless of what happened on the thing, which is fair. I mean, choking is definitely different from just being worse, right?
Then I mean, it's not like there are no chokers. It's just that I felt like I like, for example, in that one, I felt like Mad Lions just did not get a lot of the credit they deserve because people were like Rogue choke, and I also think it made people almost incapable of actually analyzing the consistent flaws Rogue has, and I think that really matters now, because the elements that Rogue don't have, that they weren't abused for now, the questions of why those things weren't strategically abused really matters if you want to talk about how well they do at Worlds. What kind of a team beats Rogue? What kind of a team could no European team actually be? Why did G2 beat Rogue once and then lose to Rogue the next time? You know? Like, these questions really matter.
We can. That's definitely a very good topic because we will also be talking a bit later about Worlds in the group Rogue got drawn into. But for now, with the Fnatic series, I mean, as we were talking about Trimby, he was actually like one of the person on Rogue I was looking at. Okay, how is he gonna perform in the stadium? Because, you know, he's not only like in person on camera and interviews, he's always such a nice guy and such a sweet guy, but you can see the tension on his face sometimes, and I was really worried that it might be the case that he is just completely gonna collapse in such a stadium environment. But like the opposite happens, right? Where you could just see like the energy taking him over to the point where his teammates actually in the voice comms were calming him down and saying, "Okay, calm down, dude. You know, like we're still fighting. Like at least end the fight before you start cheering." Larson was trying to tell him, "Please, we're still in the game. We're still in the game." So that was good to see. But I think, what do you think about Rogue's approach to the Fnatic series then? Because you criticized Fnatic's draft, you said? You think, but
I did.
Yeah.
And I think the initial approach Rogue took into them was one that should stylistically lose them the game. But the reason that it didn't is because Fnatic ended up taking those trades where he suddenly became really reliant on those committals. I think overall, Rogue haven't for years changed from being a team that looks primarily to get winning lane setups and then trying to play out the game through that with split lane states, which is a difference between them and a lot of other teams. I don't think they changed this approach too much. I do think their scouting got a bit better because they understood that those particular trades were beneficial for them, and so they just let them happen and forced the enemy to have to free up their more comfort Jarvan, right? And all this stuff. So I think those approaches changed. But I don't think that they came into the Fnatic series with a complete different plan. They came into the G2 series really heavily targeting, and I like the way that they were targeting there.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
glad, by the way. Wait, actually, there's one
sure.
thing I really have to say, by the way, is that I'm really glad that they got punished for doing the Trundle Poppy bans. Because I remember so many people saying, like, why you just ban Razork's Trundle Poppy? As if this guy wasn't a fucking Echo one trick who pivoted into Graves and had some of his best competitive games on Graves and just became like an insane farming job. Like, nah. Like, I'm so glad that when they did those meme bans, they got absolutely analed because I hated seeing those suggestions.
I mean,
Those were like Reddit tier suggestions, you know?
sure.
Well, me two champs, ban them. Like, so that's
I
champs.
mean,
Are you
sure. I mean, at the same time, when it's a BO5, you have that leeway to try to play a bit with what you might expect and what you can test players for, because this is also Razor's first time in a big stadium. Maybe if he isn't on a Poppy or a Trundle, maybe he is a bit less comfortable. You don't know. Obviously, it wasn't the case because he's playing on Xin. In that game, he's playing well. But I will also say Rogue. From after that game one, they just said, "Yeah, we're gonna ban Silas because we can't let Humanoid play a playmaker. It's we're just not gonna give him this champ, and then we'll see what happens."
Razork? Did Razork never play in a stadium when he was playing in France or Spain? I'm pretty sure at some point he must have. Because like when it comes to European players, it's a bit more difficult because they do play their
Yeah, you mean like the
ERL
ERL
finals in
finals?
stadiums.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, this was like a crowd of 12,000. I highly doubt that would have been that big, but
Well, on an oddly enough, on an EU Masters level, no, it wouldn't have been. But there are times where ERLs do try to go for those kinds of stadiums, and I mean you're
I
seeing
mean, we
that
see it with
leverage
K
more.
Corp and Koi
Yeah,
are hosting these
yeah, yeah.
showcases, right? But
But yeah, like I'm not. I definitely wouldn't think to rely on. I wouldn't think to rely on that on any European player, by the way. I think to rely on that only in terms of like I know this European player chokes when it comes to stage, right? There are ones you know, but I wouldn't assume an ERL player would be unused to stadium. But I think that's probably quite archaic because COVID has necessitated that we moved away from those formats.
yeah,
So that could actually be true now. Whereas that's something I used to just dismiss. I do think that like the actual thing that Rogue did, looking at this, that I didn't really think about at the time, but Hilly only got one Yumi game off,
yeah.
and like despite Mickey X's best efforts, it is still pretty much impossible to see a bad Yumi game. And I wonder, like, just this pivot into targeting the Yumi ban, like, if that actually. I'm not saying they planned that, right, in second game. Where, like,
Sure.
just remove them from Yumi and we can. And it'll fucking flash into us, right? He's a psychopath. Like. But I do think that ultimately, if I'm looking at anything they did in draft, that benefited them the most. But otherwise, this was kind of normal rogue play. And I always viewed Rogue as a solo lane focused team. Even when I thought Hans Sama was like one of the best players in Europe, if not the best player in Europe, like still the way the team functioned was they were a solo lane centric team.
Yep.
Always have been. Always will be so long as they maintain Odo and Larson. And that didn't change. The Rogue G2 series was a lot more interesting because they did the ban I think you had to do, which was the Senna ban. Not because Targamas was like so insane. Like he is really good, but he can unlock on most champs. But because if you don't have these kinds of setups like Senna Seraphine, there is a gaping hole that you can target. And the Caitlyn that we saw come out of Rogue earlier on, I'm glad we saw that coming in again because G2's bot lane is vulnerable.
Yeah. Well. Let's transition to that one because there's a few things that Rogue carried over, obviously, from the Fnatic series that we already to the G2 series from the Fnatic series that we already saw. Renekton being played more. It's not a champion auto that's typically played throughout the split. And Soraka support. We also saw that in the Fnatic series, and they played it in the opening game against G2. Which G2 then tried to copy in game 3, I believe, to their demise. It was those two champions they carried over. They also played Kalista in their opening game. Comp obviously got the pentakill for this one. I mean, Rogue came out of the gate swinging. It can't be said anything otherwise.
So I really liked their opening draft. So first off, obviously I was picked by G2, so I voted against it immediately. Um, but the thing about going Callista Soraka here, and leaving your last pick for your support, is that enabled them to just stomp level 1 in lane, even though they were against Draven, right? Like, Draven's all-in isn't really online until level 2, kind of level 3. So with Renata, you're not actually that worried about them if you have this heavy double priority lane with Callista Soraka. And that's how it ended up playing out. I liked the Callista into Jarvan pick. G2 did the Jarvan takeaway against Rogue in spring, if my memory serves me properly. And this is a big thing. So the Senna Seraphine thing. So the way G2 beat Rogue in spring and the way G2 beat Rogue in summer. God, I love we have losers brackets, so I can say that even though I'm talking about G2. Is that they disguised Flakked. And this was a point that was brought up in spring, but kind of forgotten about. But like they were heavy on Xayah, if I recall correctly. And they also managed to meme Misfits into playing Xayah, even though Misfits should not have played Xayah whatsoever in those playoffs. Because Neon was like their big carry at that point, so they had to have him on a hyper carry, and that was the Jinx meta as well. But I assumed they were scrimming G2, so they ended up picking Xayah, which is only going to strengthen them in mid game. But G2 weren't picking Xayah to strengthen them in mid game. G2 were picking Xayah because it's bloody difficult to dive and bloody difficult to make a play on while Targamas does his thing. With Senna Seraphine, it was bloody difficult to remove Flakked from the game as well, and it was very easy for him to be useful. They were strengthening their weakest link with these kinds of picks. By removing the Senna here and going all in on Callista Soraka, Caitlyn Tahm Kench. I didn't really like the Tahm Kench. Like, I think there, like, and obviously that game was the hardest game for Rogue. There, they didn't all in on bot lane. Like, with the Caitlyn opening, yes, 100% they can do it. But letting the Karma through that way and not having an appropriate response, like you have to just commit and go Morgana or something like that at that point, right? They couldn't bully the lane like you want to. When Kate came in with like teleport, fleet footwork, and it was fucking longsword and all this shit. It was like, nah, okay, so they've given up trying to win bot here. I hate it. And that was the hardest game they had.
Yeah.
And they should have lost that game.
Yes.
But then like third game, back to basics, it's Sivir plus Lulu, very difficult composition for the enemy to get priority on, and that's the bit that matters, and they heavy contested that priority with their jungler as well. They understood this is the weakness, we're not going to let them get their easy picks. Xayah isn't really meta anymore, please just let them pick it, we'll literally just do comps Caitlyn. Glad they got the confidence to do comps Caitlyn. And that is a plan. That is a specific plan against G2. And I love seeing that from them. Like that for sure is it. And it also does the thing I love about specific plans against teams. It feeds into their strengths because they are a win lane, win game team. Yep. They've always tried to go for counter pick lanes. They were just ensuring that you don't just have a winning lane, but a lane where you can get kills, get lethal, get 2v2s, and it's not just Xayah pressing R on the tower or Senna Seraphine having 5 trillion shields and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think
that was really good.
Yeah. Well, I think what Rogue started doing well in the G2 series and in the first 2 games is actually going back to something that they had done before a lot, but they had kind of transitioned away from, because in the last weeks of the summer split, what they were doing mostly on red side was last picking mid. They were picking Talias and Aries and something and stuff like this, or Victors, for Larsen.
Yeah.
But what they were doing now is last picking the support. And Trimby is a very versatile support player in what he can do, how he can round out compositions. They always Rogue and the teammates feel very comfortable with letting him be picked last, because they feel very comfortable with whatever he can implement or he can round out the composition with, and that's what they were doing in these first two series. Soraka last pick, Tahm Kench last pick. He later on, I think it was I saw Euphoria, and he said the Tahm Kench pick. He wasn't sure if it was actually the right pick there, because Freddy he gave an anecdote.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, he said Freddy has an anecdote or something, if you're picking. It was Tom Kench or Lulu or something. Something has gone wrong in your draft or something.
Yeah.
It's definitely
Yeah,
Tom.
it had gone wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. But he said like it was either Lulu or somebody else, but it's definitely Tom Kench because he mentioned it because of this. And I remember sitting
Okay.
in the stadium and watching this, and I was talking to a friend of mine, a French journalist, Paula Rivet, and we were talking, okay,
Yeah.
what's going to be the last pick here? You know, because you have the Caitlyn. Um, could be a Renata angle maybe, or Morgana angle, you know, because you have these synergies with Caitlyn very much, and then you went Tom Kench, you're like, huh. So yeah, it definitely
Yeah.
echoed that sentiment because Tom Kench, he's a very safe pick, but he's not definitely he's not
No.
not like the final pick by which you're gonna say, oh man,
Yeah.
this drives the nail home in the coffin, you know. So it's like, okay, it's Tom Kench, he's not gonna die, it's fine, you know. It's
I mean, I'm very sure that they opted for support last because they wanted to abuse bot lane over and over again
mm-hmm,
on repeat. And
mm-hmm.
they, with the Tom Kench pick, the only way they're going to win with that is if they legit just fist fight bot level 1, Doran's Blade, LT go all ham bot lane level 1,
Yeah,
right? That's the only. You have to fist fight them level 1 or you're never getting priority. But then they came out with fucking teleport, fleet, longsword, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's doomed. And by the way, random guy in the internet caf who was like some Italian coach who I argued with about this draft. Even fucking Trimby knew they fucked up with that last pick. There you go, ha.
yeah, yeah, they
So
definitely did. Yeah.
yeah, no, they did, and that that ended up being their hardest game because this is the time where G2 got their conditions off. It's just that like. I mean, you want to talk like I hadn't considered this. I hadn't considered the stadium aspect because I normally dismiss it because it's like these guys very often, which is a shame to say, like back in the day, they played in bigger stadiums in the ERLs and they didn't in LEC.
Mm.
And but here it could be true. Like, I mean, Flacker just ran this game. Like he was frontlining as Sivir, like in like face checking
Yeah,
RE melee range
yeah,
and shit like this
yeah,
in
yeah.
otherwise won fights. And there were so many fights
True.
where everyone's left on like 200 HP, where it's like if Sivir had not inted right at the start,
Yeah, you
it's one
win.
for
Yeah,
G2.
yeah,
Yeah, and even with these errors, like the few actual 5v5s G2 got, right, they steamrolled them, right, and they could have ended twice, and like it was madness. But
yeah,
like yeah, there Rogue's plan messed up, but also in seeing how Rogue's plan messed up, you could see what their plan was. And G2 could go into third game with that knowledge. Okay, they're targeting bot lane in this very specific way. They didn't get their draft off there, but now we know their plan. They didn't have an answer. Like they switched to red side.
yep,
Good. You actually
yep.
deny them the ability to counterpick bot lane, right? But that was it. Like you're just gonna go like Zeri Soraka with fucking Ari for some reason, Hail Mary that. Like why the Fiora there? You know, like are we just gonna
Yeah,
hard play for top with Soraka R? Okay. As a composition, I get your comp. I get what it wants to do, right? But if you're gonna be hard playing for top lane, then your bot lane is gonna be exposed, and you know they're targeting bot lane.
yeah.
So is there's like half an idea here of how to counter Rogue, but the other half ain't there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
The other half is too busy thinking, oh, Fiora's so juicy here, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
like, that's not the
I
plan,
mean,
guys. It's not
yeah,
the
yeah,
plan.
yeah. So going back to the game one draft. So for the people like this is where Rogue was playing Ornn, Trundle, LeBlanc for Larson, which was a surprise pick because he hadn't played it a lot. Kalista and Soraka, and I think there the Soraka pairing with Kalista was also a bit strange because usually you have to beef your champions a bit with Kalista, right? To throw them in there. But then you see how Trimby played the Soraka in that dragon fight where they were like 3v5 or something, and G2 was getting lower and lower. Trimby almost had no health. Comp presses his ult, pulls back Trimby, and Trimby just flies back in, and they permanently knock them up with Oda also there on the Ornn. You could just see this Rogue, not only did they have a good plan, they were feeling confident to just slap G2 in the face, right? Because after going 3-0 down in the previous series, you might think, okay, this is G2, we lost to them before. They didn't give a fuck. They just went in there. They just said, like, yeah, no, we're clearly the better team in this case. We're just gonna kill them all. It was beautiful to see, honestly. And I think in that first game as well, I mean,
I
what
mean,
can you say?
I hate to hammer this point home, but like, if I see Ari on the enemy team, I'm thinking, they can't one-shot any of my team. So then I can insta-lock Soraka and we're all good. It just doesn't do damage. Like, I'm sorry, the champ just does not. There's like one build it does where it does some form of damage, but otherwise, yeah, I am thinking Soraka can be useful there.
Mm.
Because especially post durability, they aren't one-shotting anyone on that team. That's not
Yeah,
happening.
I mean they also
Soraka will
have
keep them
Gwen is
alive.
also not gonna one shot anybody. You know, the only like it's gonna be a team play, which you saw actually in game two for Rogue, where if you remember, um, Rogue was stacked up on the bot lane bush near Drake,
Oh
and
god.
G2 came walking
Oh,
around,
not
didn't
this.
bother checking that bush, and
No,
then
that was so
Larson
cringe, man.
Larson just waited. Oh man, I was so happy. In CS:GO, there's something called trigger discipline. You know, when you see the enemies don't check your corner, you just let them walk past. This was Larson's trigger discipline on the charm. You know, because he just let G2 walk past until Jankos got next to him, charmed him. They melted through Jankos, and the team fight was won. And that's where an Ari picks like, yes, this is an Ari pick. I mean, I'm fine with Ari as a support champ, you know, but you have to have the damage elsewhere. But this was a clear case where the Ari, if your teammates have the damage, it can work. I mean, obviously G2 should have checked that push, but that's beside the point. But
And
yeah,
they could have also like waited a couple more seconds because like they had their solo lanes being set up, right? And Aatrox would be able to move in. But they
did
just they
they?
just they just like so they had Civic clearing bot and
Yeah,
they had
yeah.
Aatrox clearing mid,
Uh huh.
right? And then the free just enter river
Mm.
when Aatrox
Right,
isn't in the
right,
flank
right, right,
position yet
right.
because he's
Yeah.
still clearing mid and Civ is clearing bot. Like this is just purely from memory. And then so like Civ comes in after three of them have just already basically been one shot, and it's like, great, what can you do here? And Aatrox is still trying to reach, still coming down, and so it's like they get like a 5v3 into a 5v1 into a 5v1, and it was just like this is such a gargantuan int. I
Yep.
cannot believe what I am witnessing
Yep.
on my screen. It's so bad. It's made Ari look useful. That's how fucking bad it was.
I
Like
mean,
I cannot.
it's a utility champ at this point, Ari. So right, so it's fine. I don't
Yeah.
mind. I don't mind it being picked as much, but yeah, it was. And then in that second game as well, I think, as you said, G2 could have ended twice. Once
Yeah.
was at least pretty well saved by Malrang, who just cleared the wave and pulled G2 a bit away from the Nexus until his team respawns, and then
That was so triggering, actually.
okay,
That
yeah,
was so
okay,
triggering.
pull it up in the meantime. But because I
Yeah,
was watching the voice comms as well, and all of Rogue was dead except Malrang, and they were just telling
I
him,
didn't
Malrang,
know.
just clear the wave, clear the wave, just clear the wave, just clear the wave, and he did, and G2 didn't really know what to do at that point, and then Rogue respawned, and you could see, okay, G2 is just too insecure at this point to make the decision what to do to start with, not like, oh, we're gonna recall and set up for a Baron or set up for a Drake or whatever, or we're just gonna clear that jungle and loop around, or we're just gonna tank the towers anyway and just kill the Nexus from there on. But you could just see that G2 didn't really know what to do. They had 5 people, I think, in that base, and Malring was just walking in between there, just clearing everything, and they were like, okay, okay, do you have it pulled up? Okay. Hang on, actually, let me. Alright, I need this one. Yep, there we go.
This is a situation, right? They like insta-give the tower.
Yep.
Just like, yes, they can tank for this. They're like, just end. He's not gonna kill all of you before you like. Did you see how fast you delete this shit? Like, nah, this is a monumental int. They've won it. Like, what is this? Like, why is fucking one down? It was him. Just give it into man. Look, why are you moving down? No, move back. No, what are you doing? Caps gets it. Caps understands we're about to win.
Yeah.
Caps, like, of course, best player on the planet right here, fucking gets it,
Yep.
You need to be the best player on the planet to understand that you've won here, by the way. Like, nah, bro, this is so triggering. They what like everyone in the audience, by the way, was just yelling "end." By the way, at this point, and like it was so wild. Like, nah,
Yeah.
nah, man, I couldn't believe this shit. I could not believe this.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
still can't
this
believe it.
was G2's foot in the door in the series, right? Like you guarantee yourself at
Yeah,
least two more games,
yeah,
and they threw it out of the window there.
yeah. These
I
guys had fucked up a red side draft and given you
yeah
winning bot lane. Like like yeah,
yeah.
you can win the series. It's
I
just
mean, you mentioned Caps getting it. He was the G2 player who stood out to me as the one who was performing well. Still, you could see that he understood. Well, in the laning phase alone, he was doing fine. Like he was still matching up with Larsen very well. It's just very difficult for him to do anything in the team fights if the rest of your team is not gonna be there or not gonna have the same ideas as you do, right? So,
yeah.
Caps still played very well. Um, he was extremely depressed in the press conference, understandably so. Um,
Yeah, I imagine they all felt like shit in the press conference.
I mean, Flacket, obviously was down, but he seems to be a guy who deals with it by trying to be a bit more jokey, and Broken Blade as well. I don't know if you saw the voice com video, but this is actually this is actually pretty funny. So G2 got slapped game one, and then in the voice comes at the start of game two, Flacket and BB were making some like weird noise, like Flack was doing meow or something like this, they just play, just being kids, and just trying to have fun because that's what they do. And then Janko said like, okay, guys, no, like if you want to go home after two more games, then keep doing this. But come on, And he said it serious, also laughing. He was just putting his foot down, and saying, guys, this is a final. Like we're not gonna do this. And the annoying thing is that on Reddit people are gonna say like, oh, you see how immature they are and blah blah blah. Like competitors have different ways of coping with things or handling situations, right? If this works for Flacket and BB, maybe it's the way for them. But Jankos just felt it necessary to make clear, guys, this is the finals. We're 0-1 down. We're not in a position to take it light, right? So yeah, I think Jankos and Caps, also the press conference, they were super serious. I think they felt the I guess the weight of the situation more, which is interesting to me because I don't know. I would in some ways think that a veteran would be like, okay, like this, we lost, it happens. But it also shows how serious they still take it, and
I mean, a veteran is still in the game after all of this time
yeah
because they take it seriously.
yeah I guess it has been their life, right? So
Yeah, I mean the joking ones are more likely to have fucked off to NA by now or something like this,
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame. I remember when TSM went 0-6 at Worlds in 2020, and they walked like they when they were 0-5 and just lost their game or something. They walked off the stage and they were joking around. People were getting angry at them for being like for having a light mood or chuckling. Like at the same time, you don't know, you have no clue what it's like to be a player in this case, right? I'm not gonna judge how they deal with the situation unless they're being blatantly disrespectful to their opponents. But at this point, they're at most being disrespectful to themselves or something, or something like that. Which it's your situation. You probably know best how you want to deal with that situation. So it's the same for Flacket and BB who were making those noises in the voice comms. I understand that Jankos gets frustrated, but that's a thing between them. So yeah, I this is, to me, it's not necessarily an indicator of them not taking it seriously. It's just maybe how they want to deal with a situation like that. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, the G2 Rogue series, man. Oh, we get to the end now because you should really watch that. I don't know if you watch any of the Voicecom episodes, but this one I highly recommend because Odo Amne, he had said on broadcast or the broadcast interviews and press conference as well that he had stepped up a little bit as the veteran on the team and given like the pre-game speeches. He normally doesn't do this because he thinks they're cringe or like cringe.
Yeah, he does normally think they're cringe.
Yeah. But now he felt it was like an apt moment, and he did so. And also before the third game against G2, he said, guys, or he said like, comp, I have another one. And comp said, what? You mean like a speech? And he said like, okay, guys, it's blue side. It's a completely different game. No egos, last year, Larson and Trimby and I, we were in the same spot and we fucking lost. Okay, so no egos, and we're gonna do this. And you know, it was like the motivator. It was so, it was, you could feel that the entire team understood. Okay, just focused. It's just one more game, and they go for it. And then the moment of understanding that they actually were gonna win this series, the elation, the energy that came from it. Ah man, it's such an emotional moment. As I said at the start, you know, like I am impartial in my work, but at the same time, I see like these people know and what it means to them. And Odo has been doing this for 7 years without a title. I remember when he made it to the finals against Mad Lions after the semifinal that he had won, being like tearing up in the post game interview with Lore because he had finally made it to a final to begin with.
Yeah.
Um, and
They're also heavily favored in that final, I remember.
yeah, and just finally that relief of finally getting the trophy. I was cheering very hard for Rogue because I understood very understood the weight that came off their shoulders with this victory. So I was genuinely super happy for them, and I don't think anybody like cannot be happy for Rogue in this situation. You know, sometimes you have like a team that wins, you're like, okay, you know, like yeah, they're the best or whatever, and it's fine. But this I feel this is a team that many people in some way like relate to, or at least, you know, the players they care about. Trimby is such a sweet person. Odo is the people's champ, you know. So yeah.
I mean, I'm really happy for Odo and Larson. I just guess when it comes to LEC, for me, the tournament kind of feels over when everyone's qualified for Worlds, you know? And Worlds for me always is like the big eclipser. Like, no one gives a shit about all of the teams that won Worlds and didn't win their home title because
Sure.
no one remembers that. No one fucking remember. Like, RNG won literally everything but the World's finals, and no one brings that team up.
Uh-huh.
No one brings them up. They were literally, that's the
I mean,
only
they're
thing they
MSI
didn't win.
rating MSI champions now, right? So back to back. So
Yeah, but like, yeah, but that's they had the royal year. They had the year where they won everything,
yeah.
everything but one thing, and that's it. That's the only one people care about. And I think it's just been so many years of this that like my mentality is like, I think like I would have loved to have seen like Humanoid be the first guy since
Oh,
Caps to win on two different teams. That would
oh,
have been
Wunder would also have been in the same
one that
team.
would have been there as
Yeah.
well, yeah. Like that would have been, well, yeah, I was just thinking about, useful roles. That would have been really nice to see. But like beyond stuff like that,
Yeah.
like I'm happy for them, right?
Yeah,
And I'm
sure.
not saying it shouldn't mean a lot for them. It definitely should mean a lot for them. I think I've seen this like so many times that I'm always just thinking about what's going to happen at Worlds, right?
Yeah.
And like because if they win this and then they just drop out of groups at Worlds, like
Yeah.
I don't care. That's
Yeah.
like that's the tournament, you know.
Yeah. I mean, like for the teams that don't make it to Worlds, you know, the end of the playoffs, or if they don't even make playoffs, already determines kind of okay, what change are we gonna make? But for the teams that do make Worlds is still that add-on. Okay,
Yeah.
what change are we gonna make at the end? And that's in the end what the orgs are gonna look forward to, because every team makes changes after Worlds, aside from 2019 G2, and I think Dumb One did no Dumb One because Nuguri left. FPX I think stayed together after their victory. You know, so you know, like the teams still, even if you win Worlds, teams makes changes. But
Oh God.
yeah,
By the way, you want to
sure.
talk about someone who should get fucking fired, by the way. Whichever GM decided to put Tarzan and Doinby on the same team. That guy's a fucking idiot. Jesus Christ.
Hey, they were very close to making Worlds actually. So you
I could not
know,
believe what I was seeing when I saw that's the one fucking series I watched, and when I realized what the team was, like, wait, hang on a second.
yeah.
What's going on here?
I mean,
Uh,
if we talk about like changes being made, we already discussed, I think, last week about Vitality and where the fuck do we even start. But let's not forget, like, Fnatic is also a super team that has failed because this is a team
Yeah,
decided to win LEC, and
yeah.
they were looking good until the series against Rogue, but in the end they have failed, and it's been like given the investment made, like has to be considered a massive
I
failure.
mean, it that kind of depends. That kind of depends. Because super teams normally don't even get vaguely this far. Like G2 is literally the exception. Vitality have done the normal thing that a super team does. Like Misfits super teams, the really famous one that collapsed. The Origin team collapsed, right? Both of Origin's attempts collapsed. One collapsed actually purely like if Cole didn't have mental issues, like for sure, like they'd be completely fine, right? But like Origin also had another one, right? Where they had Xerxes, they had Alfari, they had Nuke Duck, they had Upset, and then clearly they forgot to budget for the fifth player, but it was still basically a super team, right? Well, I mean, there are definitely some people out there who would consider Jack Troll to be a super team member. So
Sure, but
there
even
shall
like
be.
even
They were 10th.
yeah,
They were 10th.
I would
Literally
I would
10th.
say I would say if you have 4 players who are considered elite, it's a super team, right?
If
Yeah,
we put the bar that if we put well, I mean by that G2 is a super team.
but this G2.
Yeah. Broken Blade was legit top 2, top 3 on like every list in summer in case
I
you've
I
forgotten.
would I would I think that you're
Last
on.
year, summer on Schalke, this guy was all over it as being like, this
Oh
is
yeah, yeah,
potentially the
no,
best
no,
shot
no,
we
no.
have in Europe.
Broken Blade, I like I can see, but
And Target Mass is like just this guy is the only guy to win EUM twice in a row. This
mhm.
guy is like he's been touted by anyone who was watching ERLs as just one of the best supports in Europe. Dot full stop. Literally just insert
Sure,
S.
I okay, but I'm not sure if that would
I don't like that
automatically
definition.
qualify to like LEC elite because you haven't done anything in LEC yet. Now you can say okay, obviously he should have been in LEC a long time ago, but I would say like having consistently good performances in actually the highest tier of competition would qualify you as elite, even if you're being caged into like
Well,
I
if you give Broken Blade it, you have to give Target Mass it.
no, I disagree because like
Target
Broken
Mass was
Blade is
also being in the EULCS before.
sorry, yeah, but
Target Mass was in the EULCS before with Giants and then moved to EOLs.
sure, but he didn't have that memorable of a performance, I guess.
I mean that was the best Giants lineup they ever had. And then when they dropped him, they immediately collapsed. So I
Right.
think they regret that.
Anyway,
But like,
but
I get what you mean. I just think that like that. I think it does have to be kind of a 5-man thing because if it's a 4-man thing, then there are a lot more super teams you can add in. And yeah, we could actually like it's at least arguably a super team because people will argue about that. But I would say that G2 lineup is a super team then, and it's not a super team. Um,
I wouldn't say so.
like
But okay, yeah, because we have different definitions, I guess, of what the elite means then. But I think yeah, back to Fnatic, who we were talking about. Sure, they got third place twice. No, yeah, third place twice actually. It's still an underperformance. Because and also if we look at the growth that this team has made, which has been minimal,
yeah.
to say the least. I asked Humanoids about this in the press conference. Said like, okay, like in your experience as somebody who has won the title, what progress have you seen this team make, and where do you think you guys, fell short in this entire year? And he said, well, I do think that we're playing better together as a team, but obviously there are still so many points of improvement for us that we just will have to focus on before Worlds, which is only starting in 2 weeks, by the way. I don't know if people realize this. It's 2 weeks until until Fnatic plays in Mexico. So it's like I'm not sure what other improvements you're still gonna make, but I would absolutely consider not even making one final with this lineup a colossal failure. It's obviously
Yeah.
not as dramatic as Vitality, but it's still yeah.
Yeah. My point was made that Vitality is kind of the norm
Yeah.
for super teams. So Fnatic, when it comes to the mean of super teams, if you exclude G2, Fnatic have like surpassed, and Fnatic are actually a top 2 super team if you include G2.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, but it's like, yeah, like I mean, where the lineup could have worked for sure. This is one of those super team lineups. So I look at it and I actually think I could see how it would work, but also it is doomed to have limitations because of the stylistic ways some of the players play there. They just don't work together. I feel like if IWD survived for the long run, I would have expected the Vitality one to be the one to go all the way and not the Fnatic one. But obviously they just insta-booted Selfmade.
Yep.
I don't know who you. I don't know if you even apply blame here because it's not like. Because when it comes to Fnatic, when it comes to Vitality, fucking hell, like throw them all in the fire. But when it comes to Fnatic, like because they still made top 3 back to back.
Yeah.
It can't be classed as like a catastrophic failure, I think. Like it definitely didn't perform to their expectations, but they didn't fucking lose because of it, you know? They didn't not make playoffs because of it. This wasn't that big of a deviation.
I mean, it's definitely grounds to look to thoroughly evaluate like the system you had in place for this year and what what core parts you should change, because if you look at the year and don't see any improvement or the minimal improvement that we have seen, like you would still say, okay, man, given the investment we made, this is I would say making a final with this lineup is the minimum, and you can say that.
I just realised where we're seeing things differently. Actually, I think.
Sure, go ahead.
So, and I think this neatly wraps up the last 3 conversations we had.
Okay, go ahead.
Because for me, the LEC is less important, and I've even been in a position where I didn't make the finals, and I got third in any of the other EU teams at Worlds. So I've never looked at that split and even thought about not making the finals. Never felt that way. If this Fnatic lineup makes it to the semis and the other ones and the other EU lineups don't, would you still consider it a failure?
You mean the World semis?
Yeah.
Well, okay, yes, in some way. Ah, that's a very good one, actually.
Yeah. For me, it's not over. That's why I have this kind of feeling right now. I'm not willing to call it anything like this, but that's because for me, I feel like it's not even like.
Okay, so like in the end, you like if you look at from the org perspective, what are you getting out of this as an org, right? A final appearance, like obviously a title gets you a lot. You get a lot to go off. In terms of the reputation you get for your brand, I would say that appearing in a final is also there. I guess making Worlds adds to this, but I think that if you are Fnatic, an org that has historically, last time was already in 2018 obviously, but has been dominant in Europe so much, and you want to continue to establish yourself as one of the leaders in Europe, I think you're also going to have to show to the European fans directly, yes, we are in Europe among the elite. Now, obviously, if they're going to go to Worlds, European fans will be very proud of them if they make it to the semis, right? But I do think that I guess if they make it to the semis, it's not a failed year. But I would say at this point, it is a failed year, I guess.
Okay, so what about this? What if they're the only team to make it out of groups?
No, we kind of have to look at the group. Who are they with again?
They could potentially. So, actually, this allows us to use the images we
Yes.
Holy
I'll pull it. Okay, we're now going to transition this into World. So, we have an image here. Hang on, I'll pull this one over it because I have to. Fuck, where's my mouse?
Dude, are we just like really bad this year, or like do these groups all look monster? Well, not Group D.
Hang on, my mouse is.
Of course, we can't get into Group D.
Yeah. Hang on, where the fuck is my mouse? Oh, there we go. All right.
Why is there some random chief financial officer in Group D?
Yeah. All right. So I've pulled up the image for the viewer. For the viewer on the left side, you see the group stage draw. On the right side, you see the play-ins draw. As you can see in the play-in stage, Group A is Fnatic, Beyond Gaming, Detonation Focus Me, Evil Geniuses, Loud, and I guess it's Chief from the LCL. And then in Group B, we have DRX, RNG, Saigon Buffalo, Mad Lions, Istanbul Wildcats, and Isurus Gaming. On the left side, we have the group stage, where in Group A we have C9, T1, EDG. Group B is JDG, G2, and Damwon. Then Rogue, Top Esports, Gum Esports, and Genji. This is Flying Oyster actually, and 100 Thieves. Their name is Flying Oyster. People are very excited about this team, because they won the PCS. Right. So what's gonna happen?
Oh my god.
Sorry.
They have to get out of Cloud9 T1 EDG.
Yeah. If Fnatic makes it to the group stage, they will automatically be placed in Group A, regardless of if Mad Lions makes it out or not. Because there are 2 EU teams in the play-ins, they have an adjusted rule that if both make it out, the 4th seed, which is Mad Lions, will be placed in the group that already has an EU team. And as you can see, in Group C and D is where we assume DRX and RNG will be placed, because we assume they will make it out of the play-in stage. Any of the minor region teams, so like Beyond Gaming, Chief Esports, Saigon Buffalo, if they make it out, they can be placed in any group, except Saigon Buffalo cannot be placed, I guess, in... Oh, no, actually... Beyond Gaming and Saigon Buffalo cannot be placed in their VCS and PCS group. But yeah, we're assuming DRX and RNG make it out. RNG will be placed in Group D. DRX will be placed in Group C. So, right. What we were talking about? Fnatic, actually. Yes. So if Fnatic makes it out, they will be placed in Group A with T1, EDG, and C9. The reigning world champions, EDG. And T1, who still, even though they looked pretty shitty in LCK this year compared to what we've seen from the previous years, it's still T1. They still have Faker, Gumiushi, Korea, Owner, Zeus, it's...
Humanoid runs Faker, alright?
I mean, he did well for his Faker on Splice in 2019, so, Yeah. So you were saying if Fnatic's the only one who make it out of groups, is it a successful year?
Yeah, they made it out of this group. Jesus. You're lying to me if you're not impressed if they make it out of this group. You're lying to me.
That's fair, yeah. I mean, actually, if you think about it, like last year, Group A was Top Esports, Damwon, Rogue, and C9 as well. And then it was in the end, the LPL team, who was one of the favorites to win it, failed, and C9 made it out, but it was between C9 and Rogue. So what if EDG, reigning world champions, completely collapse, and it's between Fnatic and C9 to get to the final, to get out of groups? That would be good.
If you build a European super team for any reason, it's to get out of Group A. Like that's what you build it for. Right? I also feel like if they get out of Group A, there's a decent chance they go semis. It just really sucks because looking at the playing stage and group stage, and I did tweet about this. This is God's wrath being laid upon Europe itself for our sins moment is when Fnatic and Mad both can't make it out first in their group, and they have to play each other in playing stage, and Mad Lions beat Fnatic and start tweeting about how, well, this is just what happens when 4 all pros face...
Alright, so people who are unfamiliar with the format,
has to happen.
I'll explain the playing stage format, because it's a new format. I guess they used it previously as well when other teams were absent, but this seems to be the go-to format now, and I actually quite like it because we get more inter-regional clashes. So the way it works is they play a double, or like a single round robin, I think, in their group. So they play each team once. Then the first place team in the group automatically advances to the group stage, and then the third and fourth team, for example, in Group A, let's say it's, I don't know, EG and DFM, if they are third and fourth, they play against each other in a best of 5, and the winner of that plays against the number 2 team of Group B, and vice versa. So the third and fourth of Group B play against each other in a best of 5, and the winner of that plays against the second team of Group A for the best of 5. and the winner of of those two series then advance to the group stage as well. So this means if we look at Group B, let's assume RNG is first and DRX is second. We have Mad Lions, if they are third or fourth, maybe playing against Saigon Buffalo. Let's say they play against Saigon Buffalo in best of 5. Assume they win this one. They then play against the second place team in Group A for the final spot in the group stage. Now, that could be Fnatic. Maybe Fnatic is first place in the group and they automatically advance. Then we avoid this whole scenario. But if EG, Beyond Gaming, or DFM, like if any of the other teams are first and Fnatic is second, that would be the situation in which Mad Lions could face off against them for the final top. Now, I will say, Group B, I'm not gonna assume Mad Lions is gonna win this group because it's reigning and the side champs RNG were literally one of the best teams still in the world. We saw it just a few months ago. It's DRX. Now, they aren't the DRX with Chovy anymore. Chovy's now actually on a good team. He's on Genji with Ruler, and the whole gang is there. That's the one super team that pulled it off this year. So DRX isn't that strong, and I would say LCK in general has not looked as great as in previous years, but it's still LCK, so I'm not going to count them out entirely. Mad Lions, if you remember, also looked fucking shit, so yeah. And Saigon Buffalo is the team that ended G2's win streak. Saigon Buffalo is the one who killed G2's win streak at MSI and sent them into the depths of that they fell into, so... This group is really, really tough for Mad Lions, I have to say. Group A looks a bit better for Fnatic, at least if they perform as they did in the first 2 rounds of the...
It's so humiliating if Fnatic don't make it out of this.
Oh.
That's now at that point, I tell you it's a catastrophic failure. But also, if Mad Lions are the one to gatekeep them, I will be laughing my arse off. I will actually die. I'll die laughing if Mad Lions knock Fnatic out. It's too comic. Like it's such a horror situation that it basically has to happen. Like when Alliance perfect game nudging, we all knew they were going to lose to the Brazilian team. Your perfect game. There was one of only 3 perfect games ever in League of Legends history, and did it to a Korean team at the height of Korean dominance. There was no way that they weren't just going to get stomped by Brazilians the very next game. Of course that was going to happen. All right, and I'm seeing it here, and it's like Mad Lions. Everything everyone's saying about them is like, haha. 4 all pro, couldn't win a single BO5, couldn't prove they deserve to be here, blah blah blah, right? Fnatic, honor streaking it all the way up there, and then, oh wait, okay, they're faltering to EG, blah blah blah, it's too perfect, right? It's too perfect. The clash of storylines here is too good, alright? Mad beating Fnatic in play-ins and proving they can win a BO5 against an EU team to make it to World. It's too good. It's too good. It has to happen. The tweets are going to be so funny. The tweets are going to be so good. I'm going to prep so many bangers for this. This is based on no gameplay. I've watched none of these international teams, right? This is based on nothing but the fact that God hates us. God hates the European, all right? And has hated him for a long time. We've given him plenty of reasons to, and therefore, Mad will knock out Fnatic in play in BO5.
So, for me... Fnatic's chances in Group A, we might do a more thorough Worlds pre-episode or whatever. We'll see about this. But for me, the first thoughts is, for me, EG's shape is going to depend a lot on if Danny's actually going to be playing. For people who don't watch the LCS, Danny is their bot laner. Really a standout talent this year in the LCS in general. Danny pentakill because he kept getting pentakills in series and was just a fearless bot laner. Played very well, but unfortunately in the finals weekend, EG made it to the top 3 as well in the lower bracket semifinals. EG or Danny decided to step back for personal health or mental health reasons, and thankfully G2 or technically EG supported him in that decision, but it meant that the substitute player had to play in his stead, and they lost the series against 100 Thieves. Now, if Danny finds the time to take rest and to find himself again and get back in the team in shape, then this EG lineup is really scary. I mean, they have Inspired, they have Impact, and they have Jojo Pyun, who is also a very talented mid laner, very young guy, still has a lot to learn. They have Vulcan, one of the best supports NA has had in at least in recent years. So they have a very well-rounded lineup. So that's the big question mark for me. Obviously, EG did get shit stomped by by G2 at MSI, but at the same time, this EG also took a game off T1, if I'm not misremembering at MSI. So they definitely have the potential, and coming into the play-in stage, I definitely can see them getting ahead of Fnatic if Denny is back on the team. Loud, I don't know too much about. I know they have that Robo guy again, or Rob, like the guy who people, was it last year? It's like that I don't know if you play into the ornament, but he's a very big personality. Loud is a massive org. Can basically compare them to Brazilian FaZe Clan in terms of the content producing, and they've like millions.
Yeah,
and millions
I know of Loud.
Yeah. But Brazil is just not good as a region in terms of the level of play historically. Chiefs is from the LCO, also not a very strong region. DFM, like the beloved DFM with Evie and the thumbs up, like those are not teams I'm necessarily scared of for Fnatic. It's really EG who can kick Fnatic out of the first place position. Which might lead to a scenario where they have to play Mad for the final spot at the group stage. But looking at the group stage groups, actually, I think they're very well balanced overall in terms of strength. There's not really a group of death. Not one mega stacked with like the world's favorites on there or something. I think they're pretty well spread out. It's just going to be a very tough tournament for Europe to begin with. So, but we knew that coming into the tournament, I guess. So,
what's it like being American during this point? Is it like always like this? Like you just think every group's screwed?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. I suppose. I think we're finally getting the NA experience where we go into Worlds knowing, you know what, we might very well get no team out of out of the group stage.
I remember in in Europe, like this year felt like 2015, and it also feels like when people are looking at the group stage, it feels like 2015 again, because in 2015 they didn't think anyone was getting out. Right, you had Origin in the group of death. I ended up having like a very public bet with Monte Cristo that Origin were gonna make it out and get to at least semis. And he thought they would never get out of groups because he didn't think they were good in Europe. This was before the draw, and then they got drawn into the group of death with LGD, and LGD just insta collapsed. People thought LGD were gonna win the whole tournament, and they couldn't even get past Origin. So like, I don't know. It feels very much like that. BO1s are very high variance. I still really hate the fact that we do like BO1s to determine BO5s to then determine BO1s again. Like I hate that system.
Yep. Agree.
But I also think this is a system where Rogue theoretically do their best work.
I mean, the thing is, obviously, when people look at LPL is genuinely incredibly strong. But I think people are attributing maybe too much a bit to LCK at this point, because Damwon did not look good this year in the LCK. DRX did not look good. Like the standout team in spring was T1, and then in summer it was Gen G with T1. Obviously, they're still incredibly talented. It would probably, in this hypothetical scenario, do well in an LEC as well. Like if you mention, well, they'll be a top team, but by their standards, they did not look great. So while I do still expect T1, I guess an EDG, if to make it out of that group, even if Fnatic or Mad is in there. If I look at Group C and I look at Rogue and Top Esports, I think if Rogue plays like they did in the final weekend of the LEC, where with the team play that they had, I think they have a very good shot at actually making it out. I think G2 has a very good shot at making it out of their group if they play like they did before the finals weekend. Where they'll probably get their ass handed to them by JDG, but Damwon legitimately did not look good. Now this is before like we know what the meta is gonna be like at Worlds. This is before any of that bullshit, because it might just be, I don't know. I see Hecarim is insanely good. Like this is
Nasus is nuts.
Nessus Nessus support or
Yeah,
top.
like there are combos you can do with Nasus right now that are fucking funny.
Yeah.
But, like,
So and Nessus support is something that Trimby, for example, likes playing.
yes.
He even wanted to play it actually in the finals, but he decided in the end to play a bit of a safe option. But he really wanted to play it. He said so. It's obviously gonna depend on this. If Hecarim is gonna be a top priority pick, then I can see, for example, an EG doing super well, because Inspired is very good on the champion like Hecarim. And is G2 gonna be as good on something like this? Because if you go back to Worlds 2020, where we had the meta, I think it was Hecarim and Evelyn, those type of things, that team had trouble adjusting to the meta, so those things are obviously gonna shift and put the just change the odds a bit and how teams are gonna match up. But looking at how these teams have performed at this point, I would say that Rogue, G2 have actually a pretty good shot at making it out of its group stage if they play like they did in the peaks that we have seen this year, which for Rogue was very recent. And I think G2 is not that terrible yet either. I think Damwon actually looked rather worse even than they are the third seed of LCK. They didn't do super well either.
So after defeating Fnatic, how do Mad Lions get out of Cloud9 T1 and EDJ?
Yeah, I think they do not. If you have T1, if it's even remotely viable to play around top lane, Zeus gonna kick Armut like 4 times around the globe. Yeah. Well, I mean, what do you think Flandre is gonna like? Flandre is also insane, right? So
Flandre's here.
Yeah, Flandre is here. Fudge Factor in top.
Oh god, this cringe shit.
I
can't wait for the NA team actually in a BO5. I mean, I don't know, Cloud9's the only one that's ever done anything in a BO5. So
Yep. True.
Literally the only one.
Yep.
God, I remember in season 4 when they actually beat Samsung Blue in quarters.
Mm-hmm.
They took one game off them, the first game. They stomped them. Because Samsung Blue did like a no priority draft for some weird reason. And then 4th game, they were legit like 2 auto attacks off killing the Nexus.
Mm.
It was insane. So that was almost like a full 5-game BO5. In 2014, full North American team versus Samsung Blue, which are one of the favorites to win the whole tournament. Like, Cloud9 have a long history of actually doing something.
Mm.
But other than them, I'd love to see any of the other NA teams in the BO5. It will be so funny.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I was just thinking back because you mentioned earlier, that we could look at how this Rogue, the championship winning Rogue, might do at Worlds now against top esports. They're going to be playing as Knight. They're going to be playing as Jackie Love, like Comp versus Jackie.
Knight is still on there. Okay. Yeah. I love Knight.
Yeah. He's a very, very good player. Deserves to get more international recognition, in my opinion. But I think for me, Comp versus Jackie Love, that's going to be exciting for me because Comp.
I learned.
Yeah.
I learned Talon from watching Knight VODs in 2017. He was like one-tricking Talon, and that's how he got rank 1 on the Korean server. He also confused one of my players once, in a really funny way. Because that player,
one of your players?
Yeah, he confused one of my players because he was saying to me that I'm overcomplicating this bit. Okay, let's just go on the Korean ladder and just grab the first Korean that isn't on a team. Mm-hmm. All right, and he's like, "Look, rank 1. This guy's not on a team. Knight." And I was like, "He's Chinese." The guy looked and literally the guy looked at me, looked at the screen, and was like, "What? Really?
Yeah.
What?" It was so like his face was broke on that. It was a different time. It was a different time back then, guys. Like back then, you assumed any good player's Korean, and no one who wasn't Korean could be good. Which is why I'm always terrified we go back to. You guys have no idea how different it is now to how it was back then. You have no idea. People just genuinely did not believe it was possible to do anything to any Korean team ever. They just genuinely didn't. They could not conceive of it. You are mad to think that they could do anything.
Makes sense given the legacy that they have, right? So
I mean, it was so wild. Like after G2, like G2 basically did their job in 2019. And I remember when they beat SKT, I tweeted like, no matter what happens in the finals, like this is the win that matters. G2 have done their job, and that got like a lot of criticism from idiots who just were not involved in the EU scene, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
legit, after that, every European rookie player I talked to all had the dream of winning worlds, and you did not hear that before that happened. You just didn't hear it. No one conceived of it before that, right? And like, I'm always so worried that we end up back there. Like, I assume we won't be able to end up back there from any of these groups, especially because it looks like loads of people just assume the LPL teams will do well anyway. But like, I'm always worried about that. Orcs used to feed off that as well because it allowed them to import as many brand name players as they could, regardless of whether they, even cared about being competitive.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah.
mean, I do think the LPL like is heavily favored again. Like you have JDG, top esports, and EDG at least are looking really really solid. RNG even like how are you gonna count out the MSI winners? Like you can't realistically say I don't think they're gonna do well because as we know like we don't know how the meta shift. Even FPX heading into last year's Worlds was one of the favorites, and they completely collapsed. So that might just as well happen to any team in the tournament, right? So that we don't know, but based off what we've seen so far this year, I think it's fair to say that LPL is looking really scary, and Gen G is a force to be reckoned with. Yep. All right.
I can't comment on any of those teams yet, so.
Oh yeah.
But by
Do
the time
you
of Worlds, I
generally
will.
what? Yeah. Do you watch? Are you gonna watch VODs then before Worlds? Is that how
Yeah,
how
I'll
you
watch
approach
VODs
it?
before Worlds, but yeah, so like I approach it by like on play-in stage, I will watch VODs of the immediate play-in teams that are going to play that week, right? And stuff like this. And like, so as I'm going to watch these teams, I watch VODs of them,
Right.
And then it will depend on how we do the show. Like if we do the show after a group stage, for example, rather than as a preview of group stage, or after play-ins rather than as a preview, then I'd probably like watch the day of groups
Yeah.
and any ways I see teams play where I'm curious to know if they normally do that or like how this differs from normal. Like then I'll watch VODs specifically targeted on that, and that dramatically reduces the amount of VODs I actually have to watch because I'm being so specifically targeted. Also, if we keep like the EU focus, I only really have to know if they counted these specific aspects of the European team, so that also targets my VOD watching further,
Sure.
you know?
Sure. But
But
we'll
yeah,
we'll we'll
stuff like
we'll
this.
figure it out as we approach the tournament. What we
Yeah, I do it by feel.
yeah how we
I'll be
exactly.
prepped no matter how we do it. I'll be prepped no matter how I have systems for all this.
Cool. All right. Is there anything else you would specifically want to discuss about last week, about LEC, about Worlds,
Not
maybe?
really.
Not really. We
I would like to point out that
Sure.
I made a tweet
Sure.
4 years ago when Humanoid, Abadage, and Nemesis joined, and Larson ended up joining the next split. About how Humanoid was the best of them, but that overall I'd have it Humanoid, Abadage, then Nemesis, and when Larson came on, I rated Caps, Humanoid, Larson as the top three back then. I got a shit ton of flack for not putting Nemesis on the same caliber. Humanoid has won LEC multiple times. Larson has won LEC. Abadage's won LCS, and Nemesis has high Twitch viewership. I just want to point that out. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I remember all that, boys. Right?
I do hope. I mean, I kind of miss Abadago because like he was obviously immediately bought when he like finally started popping off and living up to what people
Yeah. I
hyped
just
him up
wanted to
to
say
be.
the reason calling that, because I don't call this out on like any other thing, right?
Sure.
But like on that, like Abadage actually contacted me and asked like things that I thought like he wasn't doing very well, blah blah blah. That's how he takes any of those kinds of criticisms, right?
Mm-hmm.
The only interaction I had with Nemesis was him quote tweeting that after his team beat Humanoid's team, where I thought Humanoid was still doing better than him, with just XD for no real fucking reason back then. And it's like I'm just glad that like the cocky, talentless one didn't fucking get it. So.
I mean, Abadaga is trying to like he is still a very very humble person, but he's definitely feeling
Yeah.
himself a lot more in NA. I remember like
Yeah.
he's shit talking a lot more now. You know he's got he's going out shopping for Gucci stuff. You know I'm very happy for him that he's found a place where he can uh
Yeah.
lead the pro
For sure.
life. Yeah,
No, he's a good guy. Like
yeah,
he's a good guy. And like when I do these player rankings, I don't like rankings of people as human beings. So like don't take them like that personally. But it's
yeah,
like, nah, really, man? Nah.
yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, he's doing super well. I'm very happy for him. Hope he at some point might even make a return to EU. Highly doubt it because it seems
Yeah.
like they're paying him very well. Even though Hansama is reportedly and to me not very surprisingly looking to come back to EU. I think I, in my opinion, because I'm not gonna say I know him very well, but I think I have a good grasp of him. I think he would love it much better in EU in the EU environment. So I would always
Mm.
expected him to come back after this year. Easy to say now, but it's genuinely what I thought. Whereas I think Bwipo might enjoy his stay in NA a bit longer if he wants to, unless he gets good offers from EU, honestly. But I think Hansama is gonna come back. I highly doubt Abadaga is gonna come back, even though I would like to see him come back. I was thinking about this. And it's probably a thought that many people have had. It's not a very unique thing, but because Jensen has just won another LCS title and is now the record holder for most consecutive Worlds appearances. Bar's a bit lower, obviously, in NA, but still a very impressive feat if you do it 8 times in a row. I really wonder how this guy would have performed in EU had he stayed here and had he, if we had seen peak Jensen. Like, not to say that he's not performing well now, but you know, peak Jensen. That's the type of player. Also Bjergsen, those type of players. Like, okay, you went to an A, you obviously found a lot of success there. Good on you. But I really wonder how would they have held up in EU among the caps as humanoids now, like Surging and
Yeah.
Larsens. Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's clear that we lost talent to them, to an A with those guys leaving. So
Yeah. I mean, the sad thing about whenever we lose talent to NA is that ultimately the talent does not perform the way that it did in Europe either.
yeah,
Whenever it goes there.
yeah,
And I always try and remind people this, like when you do import someone from like like a not a normal, well, I guess kind of from a major region,
yeah,
that guy is basically saying that he values money over potential competitive success.
mm-hmm.
The best case scenario you have is that they're coming over to prove that they're worthy of a team back then, but they'll also limit your strategic options in that regard because they won't let you have them play weak side or something like this, right?
Yeah.
So you always have to bear that in mind. I feel like Team Liquid have really discovered that, but yeah,
Yeah, they actually announced that they were not gonna do a super team again next year.
yeah,
So yeah, no real surprise there, honestly. But I mean, to your point about choosing money over competitiveness, obviously that's the thing. But like, I do think, um, sometimes players have the idea of okay, maybe I need to step away from the EU environment for a bit. That might actually play a factor, or in some case, if the player's not out of a contract, the team might just sell them to
yeah.
a North American
But
team,
but
right?
that's another like yeah. I mean
Yeah,
that's literally happened. That's another one of
yeah.
those like
Now with
yeah.
Abadaga, I believe like Schalke at the time said ultimately, Abe, it is your choice. So that's I inclined to believe there because I think Abadaga also confirmed it. He just said like, yeah, this was just a very good offer to join a team and win a championship. So he took it. Now obviously he's getting the bag there as well. So, um, but yeah, I think for many players, they still very much desire to be in EU because of the competitiveness. Now, you can argue that obviously this year it has shown that the competitiveness here is also dropping. So maybe that bar is lowered in the future for players because they say, okay, EU is also not doing super well, but then you still have the ERLs or something. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, no, okay. Well,
I mean, I haven't watched any of Abadage in North America, so I can never comment.
Oh, well, like when he joined, he was doing super well, and I think he's still considered
yeah, but he's doing well in NA. Like I like someone has to be the best in NA,
Sure,
right? So
sure,
that doesn't
sure.
necessarily speak to anything about the players on the ice
No,
level.
but because you said like it usually drop off. I think in his first split at least he did super well, and obviously they won the title with him in their first split. So
yeah, but someone has to win the title.
sure.
And normally, someone who wins the title in NA is still
Sure.
dog shit. So.
Fair.
I'm just not commenting because, like, I don't know. Maybe he gave it all his 100%, and like it didn't really matter to him about like potentially how well they could do at Worlds or the environment or any of that stuff, right? Like, I don't know. Maybe he is one of those exceptions, but I can't comment.
Sure. All right.
Is he coming to this Worlds? Is he on 100 Thieves now?
Yeah.
Well, I'll be able to comment soon. There you go.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing him at Worlds again. Actually, he gave me such a fun interview last Worlds, where I was talking to him a bit about feeling more comfortable playing in NA and getting out of his shell more and stuff like this. And at the end, because you could still tell, obviously, he was still a very humble and very kind person, but he is gotten more cheeky. So I said like, okay, so like your next game, so you're also gonna be playing as Faker, and obviously you've been called Faker Dagge. What are your thoughts on this? And he said like, yeah, obviously like a super excited to play. He's still a very good player. And then you could see in his eyes he was considering, should I say this or not? And then suppressing a smirk and a chuckle as much as he could. He said, yeah, I can't wait to clap him. And then instantly, as soon as he said that, he broke and he just ducked away. And it was like, I can't believe I said this, in that boyish, just like cheeky manner. So I very much enjoyed talking to him there. He's a good guy. Anyway, what we probably should do actually, if we wanna work towards a roundup, is the best in the West. Who was the best LEC
I would
player?
argue. Oh, well, yeah. I mean, so I actually think Odo had the best performance in the finals. Not Comp. I think Comp was up there, but like I think Comp was the differentiating factor in the G2 series, crucially, right? Like there was definitely an AD gap, but I think overall Playoffs has played best by Odo.
Yeah, I think, we're looking specifically if
these two playoffs,
the Fnatic and G2 series, I would also give it to Odo. I did vote for the MVP finals on Comp, and then Malrang Trimby interchangeably, I think, because Malrang had some insane engages again. But overall, Rogue was stepping up as a team. I think most of the players you could make a very good argument for about being at least on the shortlist for being the outstanding player. But Odo, over these two series, just absolutely kept the top lane. And from there on, Rogue was able to transition their leads very well. Super happy for the man. You could see the relief on his face when he finally got his hands on the trophy. Yeah, good shit. All right. Guess that rounds it up then, huh?
Yep.
Cool. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Best in West. As I said, we will probably do something for Worlds. We're going to discuss what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, how many episodes. You'll see it then when it happens. Keep an eye on our Twitters as well if you want to catch those next episodes. For now, thank you so much for watching at least this first LEC season. Hope you very much enjoyed it. Let us know in the comments below what you thought on the finals weekend. What are your thoughts about the Worlds draw groups? Who was your best in the West player? Should veteran grow beards? Who knows?
No.
I think you could pull it off, but
I could, but I don't want to.
Oh man. Okay. Well, if you disagree with him, let us know in the comments below. Thank you again very much for watching, and we will see you next time.